Well, I'll explain. When you start to get into the publicity and the documents surrounding education and children, you start to find some things which are rather unnerving. Some of you will know that we have a system of academy schools starting. And when you look at the academy schools, you will start to discover that the organizations who are going to run those schools are major corporations. They're profit-making corporations, and they are now being given the role of running schools where children will enter the school as soon as possible, kindergarten, and they will stay in that school until they're 18. So now we are linking profit-making next to children. The other thing we know about the academy schools is that they're getting close to an organization called Absolute Return for Kids, ARC. And I suggest you Google ARC and you start to have a look at it, because then you'll start to discover an interesting little project called Project Caressing. And this is where in schools, young children are going to be taught that it's very nice to be caressed by adults. I'm not making this up. You can go and research it yourself. Now, if you're wondering where this leads to, I'm going to tell you what's coming unless we do something about it. What is coming is that Westminster, and that is the coalition of MPs, is going to start working to make paedophilia lawful and normal. And I'm looking and I can see some of the expressions. Somebody's shaking their heads and saying, no, what this man is saying is not true. And I will say to you, simply go and have a look at documentation circulating in Germany, where there are already German government documents suggesting that we should be moving towards the state of paedophilia being normal. If you go to Denmark, we're heading in the same direction, and the same think tanks, many of them linked back to Mr. McKinsey, if you remember him and his reports on sexuality. Well, Mr. McKinsey clearly used evidence from paedophiles in his sexual report, and his advice is now being used by social services to form future childcare policy. So I'm going to say to you, for those of you who have heard some of the victims today, and you're finding it hard to accept how this is happening in authority, I am going to tell you that when you take the lid off what is happening in local authorities and social services, you will find the most despicable things happening. Now, I am not saying that everybody connected with social services is a paedophile. That would be a very bad thing to say because it's untrue. But what I will say to you is that we have created a system which is so secretive that paedophiles who do exist within social services and local government and Westminster and the church can operate without due justice. If we're going to do something to clear up what is happening, we, as adults, concerned adults, have got to do something very, very easy. It's so easy because I know all of you can do it. You do it every day. All you have got to do is talk to other people about the problem. You have got to talk to your neighbors, and you've got to say to them, do you know what is really happening with children? And then I'm going to say to you, that's the easy bit. Because when you do this, something strange will happen. And that is, some of your friends will stop liking you. And the reason is that people don't like to talk about child abuse and paedophilia because it's mucky and dirty and it's degrading and depressing. And we'd rather talk about football. Well, I wouldn't. We'd rather talk about our nice visit to Trafalgar Square. We'd rather go and buy the ice cream. But what we've got to do is bite the bullet and start talking about the problem. It is not 1 or 2 children. It is not happening to 10 children. It's not 100 children. This abuse is happening to thousands of children in this country, and the abuse is being facilitated by abusers within social services and the local authorities. What they do is they turn the tables on the caring parent. The parent who exposes the abuse is the one who's ridiculed and undermined. It will be the caring mother or the caring father who is the one who is subjected to a psychiatric report which says that they've got mental problems, split personality, they're depressives. And in many cases, those psychiatric reports are written by clinical psychologists who have never ever met or been in the same room or interviewed the person upon whom they're reporting. This is in direct breach of their own procedure. So we can see that professionals are drawn into this web. Why is it that so many law firms are into family court matters? The answer is because they make a fortune out of it. The family court system is making our law firms a minimum of £20 billion each year. £20 billion. And that is why every law firm is very happy to drag out each of the family court cases for as long as possible. They don't want to give the children back to their parents, because if they do that, they cut off their own money supply. So if we're going to talk to people about the problem, we need to start looking at law companies and looking at where they're making their profit, because the legal aid they receive comes from our pockets. We pay for it through our taxes. So we've now got the bizarre situation where our children are being stolen and they're using our money to do the dirty deed. This is not nice. Where is it going to head? Well, once you've made society believe that paedophilia is acceptable, that society will believe anything. And my view as an ex-naval officer, if I'm allowed to say that to you today, is that if I look at what's happening in this country, I smell democracy dissolving. I don't see David Cameron giving us democracy back. I see that his big society is a means by which he can take further freedoms away from us. So we need to watch Mr. Cameron and his henchmen like hawks. Any dictatorship wants the children. Stalin, China, East Germany, wherever you go, the dictators always want the children. Why? Because if you can groom the children into their political belief system, then you have won the country as a whole. And personally, I find it extremely creepy that we now have both the Labour Party and the new cons under Mr. Cameron starting to talk about getting children into service, children working with the police, children starting to do things on the streets. To my mind, this is how Hitler invented the Hitler Youth. So you may think that I'm jumping into a different arena by starting to talk to you about a dictatorship. But I would underline for you today, in the rain, that if we cannot protect our children, we do not have a future. It's as simple as that. So I'm going to end there, but I'm going to show you one thing first. This is a book, another book written by another victim. It's called Pin Down. It was written by a lady called Teresa Cooper, and it talks about her abuse over a number of years in a care home. And the interesting thing about the care home is that it was run by the church. So for those of you who are Christians or go to church regularly and think you're Christians, you need to start looking at the church, because the church is also involved in abusing children. This lady was repeatedly drugged so intensely she was unconscious for a day or more than a day. And when she was unconscious, she was visited in her room and raped and abused. Have a look for the book on Google. I recommend you read it, but I also recommend you don't read it at bedtime, because it is a very disturbing book. But this lady has had the guts to get up and tell her story, and you need to read something like this to really understand what's being done in this country. Do I think we can do something about it? 4 years ago, I was finding that difficult. But I can tell you that over the last year, and over the last 6 months in particular, it's been phenomenal how people are starting to link up. And what I like is that people are beginning to drop political banners. It doesn't matter whether you're a Tory, it doesn't matter whether you're Labour, Lib Dem, none of that matters, because to solve the child abuse situation, we have to revert to simple values: truth, honesty, compassion. And in my mind, those are the things missing in our government. If we can get ordinary people to act on their conscience, to drop their political labels on this subject, we will start to get somewhere. So it's up to you. I know the people at the back who are crowding up there by the National Gallery, some of them can hear. And we would ask all of you today, when you get home, talk to your friends, talk to your relatives, and do it every day, because if each one of you says to 2 friends what you've heard today, the truth will spread. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian.